Chapter 43, in which the ultimatum was given to the dawn. Like a ballroom in a palace, the inside of the pavilion was alive and lit by a constellation of chandeliers, full of elegantly dressed people in swallowtails and cocktail dresses. Beautiful music strewn from professional band members, accompanied by voices and laughter. Beneath the glistening chandeliers, there are groups of smaller white cloth tables and elegant chairs upholstered in luxurious green fabric. A thick beige carpet lay underfoot. Lush green plants provided a tropical look, and crystal and china adorned the tables. Dressed in his black swallowtail, Mayor Donovan sat next to his wife, Nora, 3 months pregnant, beautiful, in a silk dress of periwinkle blue, its high collar edged with Irish lace, the same lace edging the cuffs of the long full sleeves. Among them was the captain and crew of the Providence and the city council. They finished their first course consisting of lamb with a side of salmon mousse, while helping themselves with red Italian wine. But Nora simply waited for dessert. Some of the foods, especially the wine, may be unwise for the baby. "Isn't this everything I said it would be, Captain?" Mayor Donovan asked. He beamed a broad smile first at his wife and the council, then the captain. "I do expect anything better in a foreign city in Europe," the captain said. "How does it feel to travel over the world?" "That's easy. Same as everyone who flew before. You know, like Lindbergh, Hughes, Earhart, and even Bessie Coleman, God rest her soul, just to name a few." Nora can't help but stifle a laugh. "It really is a thrill, isn't it? Seeing the world from up in the air, it really is magical." "Confidently, Mrs. Donovan," Bagley said. "However, I can't help but wonder if dirigibles are going to be common," she said. "I can tell you that it's not like the Akron class constructed for the American Navy," the captain said. "It wasn't even used for scouting and reconnaissance. The Providence is considered a flagship to the future. They shall be common in the skies next to the airplane for the next 100 years. She shook her head. "I wouldn't risk that up in the air. I'm far too superstitious." "I respect your personal opinion, Mrs. Donovan. I expect everyone's superstition. It's why we have to take extra precautions in Empire City. Come next year, the Valkyrie will be a passenger liner for the sky with a tube of helium on top. You'd be surprised what the future can bring." Mayor Donovan raised his glass, saying, "I can probably drink to that." Councilman Seitz raised his. "Same as I." Councilman Thorne nodded. "The Valkyrie. Quite a fitting name for a future ship, albeit uncertain. Those who foretell the future." Just then, Mayor Donovan can see a formidable blue-eyed woman with fiery red hair, dressed in her fox furs, approaching his table. "Sorry I'm late," she said. "No need to apologize, Miss Chandler," Mayor Donovan said. "You're just in time for the next course. Poached salmon, seasoned with mousseline sauce." "Oh no. No mousseline for old Dorothy Chandler. I'm having boiled lobster with a side of melted butter." "So how does it feel to be back in Cadona?" "It really is misfortune I've missed visiting that big city. Although I did receive a tiny Statue of Liberty as a going-home present, about 11 inches tall. Can't wait to go back to work at the KBC station." "Will you be at the fairground reporting the celebration with Trout tomorrow?" the captain asked. "Wish I could, but I can't," she scoffed. "I'm needed at the station tomorrow, but that means you don't know what you're missing." "Too bad I won't be the only reporter. This Kincaid man reports the weather and has his breakfast show broadcast every morning." "Clearly something good will come out of it either way," Mayor Donovan said. "Like everybody else tomorrow, you could see the dirigible from up in the air, showing off gratitude towards the future." "And by the future we do mean any future," Bagley said. "The future of airships, the future of travel, the future of aviation in general. It'll be next to the airplane. Imperial City and even Bay City would even be interested in airships, just as long as they've constructed their own hangars. Just then, Councilman Seitz felt his face distressed. "What's wrong, Mr. Seitz?" Mayor Donovan said. Councilman Seitz said with an embarrassed air, "It appears the wine went right to my bladder. Is it all right if You go ahead. I'll be discussing some things. I'll tell you the important ones when you get back." "Would you like to order something for the next course?" Councilman Norris asked. "Roasted duck," Councilman Seitz said. "All right," Mayor Donovan said. Then he saw Councilman Seitz making his way to the men's toilet, just as their waitress approached the table. Their waitress for tonight, with blue eyes and blonde hair. Yes, Miss Lorene," Mayor Donovan said. "We're ready to order for the next course. We'll have the poached salmon, seasoned in mousseline sauce. Make sure it's cooked well, because my wife is having a baby. Seitz will have the roast duck, and Chandler will have the lobster with melted butter. Then we'll have dessert. Seitz is in the restroom, but he'll come back," Councilman Thorne pointed out. Nodding, the waitress Caitlin Lorraine smiled and take their menus. "We'll have your order in about 15 minutes. Then she makes her way to the kitchen. But first she needs to go to the restroom. More emphatically, the men's toilet. Unaware to the patrons, she had a long black claw on her forefinger, protruding and tearing out from her white glove. 15 minutes have passed. After the waitress gives the company their order, Mayor Donovan pulls out a list from his coat pocket. "So, tomorrow morning, there shall be a marching band featuring the Ronaldo Moon Barbershop Quartet, baked goods and sweets, provided by Good Cooking Pan Bakery and other well-known bakeries. And later on tonight, there's going to be a fireworks show with a costumed reenactment of the city's founding," Councilman Norris said. "All that just to make it a glorious celebration, as long as the performers don't get food poisoning." "Essentially, Mr. Norris. That's why I heard at the parade last Tuesday," Mayor Donovan said, before looking at his watch. "What's taking so long? The food's already here, including the duck. Maybe something's wrong," Councilman Oakes said. "I'll go check on him." He rose up and turned, but he saw Councilman Seitz approaching the table. He sat back down. "Never mind, he's back." As Councilman Seitz sat down, Mayor Donovan asked, "What took you so long, Mr. Seitz?" "Don't mind me, sir," Councilman Seitz said, raising his hand. "Please, excuse me for taking so long. I feel a little lightheaded, that's all. Not to mention the pain on the back of my neck. That's some very odd wine. It has to be the wine." "Are you sure?" Councilwoman Michelson asked. "I don't feel a little lightheaded after I drank it. Maybe I should ask a nearby waitress." "That won't be necessary, Lisa. I'm in my 50s, and I've already felt the cold hand of my mortality. And I hate having a paunch. I find it very disrespectful." "Sorry to hear that," Councilman Thorne said. "Clearly, something tells me that something very odd is going on in this restaurant," Councilman Seitz said. "It better not, Mr. Seitz," Mayor Donovan said. "I'm through hearing such nonsense, not even in this restaurant. I don't want the dirigible captain, Chandler, and my wife to be scared out of their wits." "Who said about me being scared out of my wits like a little girl?" Dorothy Chandler asked. "I spent 4 weeks in Empire City, having a wonderful time. I was enjoying the sights, as well as my visits to the hangar where the dirigible is housed. I didn't know something unusual actually happened here while I'm gone. Granted, I was only scared when that terrible storm came while I was on board the dirigible." Mayor Donovan said nothing, as she continues eating her meal. In a more cheerful tone, she said, "Oh, how I miss the taste of lobster captured from the North Sea. Isn't it magnificent? So firm to the taste. I wonder if it will be possible to compare this to the dish that's been served in the restaurants of the city that never sleeps." "Speaking of sleep, Mr. Seitz," the captain said, Make sure you get some by tonight when you get home. He's right, Mayor Donovan said. You'll need it with the rest of the council tomorrow morning. Okay, I will, Councilman Seitz said. And make sure you give my Muriel my best respects on the phone. Of course I know her phone number. I will do just that after dinner. So what have I missed while I was away? If you like, I'll give you the schedule for tomorrow's celebration before you go home. A schedule, you say? Then give it to me now. Mayor Donovan gives Councilman Seitz the schedule, in which he reads quietly. Games will be open from 10 to 6. Dirigible departs at 2 in the afternoon after inspections are completed. Costumed reenactment of the city's founding at 7. Fireworks show at 8. Then he suddenly exclaimed, I swear, Mayor, you really wanted to go over the top. Well, what's so wrong with that? We're only giving the people high-quality entertainment, and they'll get it. This will be a day long remembered, Mr. Seitz. Just as long as nothing goes wrong. Not a single thing. Councilman Seitz sighed. How I pity you for promising such a thing, and hoping nothing actually goes wrong. Right now I do feel bad about Mr. Takahata after you dismissed him yesterday. He probably found somewhere else to work by now. Mr. Takahata? The captain asked. Who is he? One of the members of the council? There's only 5 of you. He was a member of the council. Mayor Donovan corrected. I dismiss him because I'm tired of his objections in the previous meeting. I'm also tired of his beliefs. What kind of person in the city will be irresponsible enough to believe in something that doesn't exist? There is nothing more to say. He glares at Councilman Seitz. Is there? Councilman Seitz shook his head. No, nothing. Now come on all, Mayor Donovan said to the others. Let's eat. Don't eat now, Councilman Seitz informed, looking ahead. His blood turned cold. Here comes that Ryutaro character. What? Mayor Donovan almost choked, and immediately looked. Sure enough, he saw Ryutaro approaching the table, dressed in his white swallowtail. The mayor watches as Ryutaro kissed his wife's hand. How are you, madam? He asked. She said sheepishly. Just fine. Thank you. I'm expecting a child. Mayor Donovan glared at him. You stay away from my wife. Fritz, don't be rude, she said. He's just being polite. But not to me. That's because we've met before in City Hall, Ryutaro stated. You, your council, me, and Miss Lenoir. You can tell Miss Lenoir that I always refuse to believe in such absurd nonsense. Mayor Donovan glared. It seems that you've got her letter this morning. You must not be angry with me, Donovan. It will be pointless to make a scene at the table. No. Not in front of your wife. Mayor Donovan rose up and growled, You leave her out of this. She rose up. Fritz! Sit back down and be quiet, Mayor Donovan said. This doesn't concern you. Are you sure? Ryutaro asked as she slowly sat back down. Then he thought about something. I know what you're thinking. You didn't tell her about Miss Lenoir. No, I do not, Mayor Donovan said. Why didn't you? She asked. Because she's nothing but delusional, believing in such nonsense when she's supposed to get her head out of the clouds like a grown woman. I wouldn't want you to hear it, he said to Ryutaro. If she's here with you, I don't think she'd want to hear what I have to say to her. Let's have this conversation at the men's toilet, Donovan, Ryutaro said. Fine, Mayor Donovan said, but it'll be the last time. Indeed, it will be. You stay here and eat, Mayor Donovan said to his wife. Don't worry about me. It's really for the best. I won't be long. He followed Ryutaro to the men's toilet. However, that's when Nora lost her appetite. "What's wrong with my husband?" The men's toilet was decorated with bright red walls that contrasted with the white basins and the tile floor. Above basins, there were stacks of towels placed in small alcoves. Mayor Donovan and Ryotaro head inside the empty room. "Always typical of you, Donovan," Ryotaro said, shaking his head. "You had to make an opposition out of Miss Lenoir." "I'm going to level with you," Mayor Donovan snapped. "You have ears like everyone else, don't you? I don't ever want to hear that name, Miss Lenoir, anymore." "And you won't. Not even in the fairground. But you will be picturing her anger towards you, enough to make you wake up in bed with your hair bleached white from shock, screaming in the middle of the night." "You think I'm supposed to be scared of Miss Lenoir? You make sure she gets this through her head for good. I will not welcome the cat girl to the city, and bad things aren't going to happen to the bicentennial." "Funny. I wish you could say the same thing to that dirigible. I hate to see something bad happen to it." Enraged, Mayor Donovan swings his fist to slug Ryotaro, but he tightly gripped the mayor's hand and twisted it before shoving him against one of the basins. "Are you sure you want to fight me?" Ryotaro asked. "You want to make me use force? She would, you know. In fact, Miss Lenoir was less hesitant than I. I would even report your refusal. I hate to say you're angry if I did. No one will suspect you in pain. They'll think it was some sort of accident. What should I tell her?" "I meant everything I said. I even addressed the city through a radio broadcast yesterday." Mayor Donovan sneered. "Supernatural things will no longer be tolerated anywhere. There won't be an incident in the bicentennial celebration. There will never be one. Not in the fairground. Not anywhere in my city." "You do not promise that. It shall be inevitable, no matter what you do, and no matter how many feeble attempts you try to prevent it." "Then what makes you so sure this cat girl is really important to my city?" "You and your city will have to find out yourself. And if you don't want an incident affecting your stupid bicentennial, you have until tomorrow afternoon in which you change your mind. You, your council, and the whole city depend on it." "My decision still stands, no matter what you say to me," Mayor Donovan stated. "I've had it with both you and Miss Lenoir. I'm sick and tired of all this nonsense that's happening here. I don't ever want to look at you or her, especially at the fairground tomorrow. So don't even think of going there. The moment either you or her arrive, you will be arrested. Do you understand me?" "I do, Donovan," Ryotaro said. "Tomorrow we're going to make sure you regret of ever driving the girl away, like she meant nothing to anyone in the city. Don't think you'll get away with this. Tomorrow will result in consequences if you don't welcome her. Goodbye." As Ryotaro stormed out, Donovan thought, "He's about as worse as Miss Lenoir. I'm certain I'll never see their ungrateful faces again, not even in the fairground." He heads out of the bathroom and finds Councilman Seitz rising up. "I have to leave, Mayor," Councilman Seitz said. "I have to get up to go to the fairground tomorrow morning." "So that means you're done eating?" Mayor Donovan asked. "Yes. It's just that I can't bear the look on that man's face when he storms out of the restaurant. Good. This is exactly the way it should be. And if he or Lenoir ever see my face again, they'll be the ones who are sorry for sure. I'm sorry to hear that. I'll feel better tomorrow. You have a good evening, Mayor. I wish you luck for the bicentennial. I have to go look for a cab or a bus to pick me up. Good night. Then he left the restaurant. Seeing him go, Nora said, I should be going too. No, you don't, Mayor Donovan said. We haven't got dessert yet. Now look, I know it's been a bad night, but we have to make the best of it. It'll be fine by tomorrow, Nora. I promise. Maybe you should tell Mrs. Seitz that he's coming home, Councilman Thorne said. Mayor Donovan nodded. Yes. There's a phone booth near the exit for customers. I'll be right back. Just continue with your meal. He heads inside the phone booth and dialed the number. Then he waited. Finally, he can hear Muriel's voice. Hello? This is Fritz Donovan, he said. I'm here to call you that your husband is going to be home soon. I think he's having a bad... Then he can hear her crying. What is it? He asked. What's wrong?
Fritz, Charlie was at the living room when I found him.
Muriel's voice moaned. What? He asked. His eyes widened. No, he isn't. He's outside the restaurant.
Listen. Please listen.
She sobbed.
Something terrible has happened to my Charlie. I found him with a bad sting on the back of his neck. He can't even breathe. I already called the doctor, and he's on his way to the hospital. But I don't even know what's going to happen to him.
He nearly
please,
dropped the
God.
phone. His lips drooped. A sting on the back of his neck. He can hear the phone drop.
Oh, please, God.
She cried.
Jesus, I hope he's okay. Lord Jesus, please don't take away my Charlie.
He hears her break down in sobs. By the time he hung up, that's when he thought about something. Councilman Seitz told me he had a pain on the back of his neck. But if he is outside the restaurant, then... Oh, Donovan. I'm sure she's hysterical. Nothing bad happened to him. After all, he was in the restaurant at the time. But what if Seitz wasn't really... He heads out of the restaurant. Already he was face to face with Councilman Seitz, glaring at him. Mr. Seitz, Mayor Donovan said, your wife told me on the phone that you're in the living room with a bad sting on your neck. She said you were lying there, not breathing. It could be worse, Councilman Seitz said coldly. He could be dead. Then Mayor Donovan swallowed in a throat that is dry. What did you say? How dare you call me delusional? He asked. There was a hint of femininity in his voice. Before Mayor Donovan could say anything, Councilman Seitz punched him mightily in the left jaw. To the mayor, it was like an explosion as he falls onto the sidewalk. When he gets back up on his feet, he saw Peugeot parked onto the curb, with Councilman Seitz and Ryutaro inside. Mayor Donovan saw Councilman Seitz by the window, glaring at him before saying, Matashita Donoban. Then the Peugeot drives off. What the devil? He's never behaved like that before. He doesn't even speak Japanese before. He hasn't been to... Does that mean this really... Oh, what the devil is going on here? Well, allow me, the author of the story, to tell you. In fact, the Councilman Seitz you've read in this part of the chapter turns out to be an imposter. After the real Councilman Seitz went to the man's toilet and did his business, just as he was washing his hands, the Cat Queen, masquerading as the waitress, heads inside. He turned to look at her, only for her face to become cat-like with huge grinning fangs, and those yellow eyes with black slit pupils. She snarls when he opens his mouth to scream, but she already protrudes her black claw and jabs it into the back of his neck. He instantly goes into convulsions before falling onto the tile floor, gasping and groaning before he lost consciousness. That means he cannot see her transform into him, a fake, cannot see her take his place at the table. As for the waitress, the disguise passed it on to Koharu, who is able to transform into a human. She has Gunter Hawkins and Mabel Pearson drag the real councilman out the back door and into the cat bus, where he is taken home and lay him onto the living room floor. All the while, no one is ever the wiser as these events unfold, as if she planned it. In short, it was the Cat Queen who was at the dinner table, and Mayor Donovan was completely gullible until he finds out the truth too late. But even that was considered a slap on the wrist compared to what's to come tomorrow afternoon. Regarding the real councilman's sights, even when he was sent to the hospital, the doctors are certain that they'll find nothing wrong with him. Dressed in a white bathrobe and matching slippers, exhausted after a night out, the Cat Queen waved an informal dismissal to Inari and said, "Bring me my engineer, darling, and draw me a bath full of bubbles." The kitsune bowed and leaves her bedroom on the east side of Reynard Manor. 3 days had already passed since she left Kodono behind, and she began to like it here. A lot better than the Hotel Valerian. Like her dear friend, Furukawa Ryotaro, she happens to enjoy the magnificent beauty of the forest and the unusual things that dwell within it, especially the great wolf, who is willing to preserve. With the forest around the Cat Queen, careless, she barely felt like doing nothing but relax herself with the leisure she has been given by either Ryotaro or his servants. The room around her was entirely furnished to her liking. A grand fireplace with a potted silver vine on top, blue curtains for the cats to occasionally scratch their claws on, not that Ryotaro matters about that, a dressing table, a mahogany chest of drawers with her ancient Victrola on top, a nightstand with a rotary telephone, and a queen-sized bed with rich satin sheets and plush pillows. It was as though his house exists to entice her. His house, and this forest. Sitting patiently on the plush green velvet bench and peered into the mirror on the dressing table, sometimes she sang under her breath to the music playing from the Victrola. It did bring forth feelings of nostalgia, easily calming her, every time she listens to either in her room or in her cat bus. Every time she can feel her hostility wiped away, with her muscles tense and relaxed, and her tail slowly waving. Hopefully, the moment would last for a while before her engineer found some way to ruin it. Unfortunately, he did, and he was irritated when he was informed by Inari that his boss requested his presence. It was an order from the Cat Queen, and not a suggestion. The engineer shoves Inari away and stormed upstairs, bursting into the garden bedroom where the Cat Queen is waiting. "What do you think what's going to happen if you try to leave me?" she asked. "I told you, you wouldn't last a day." "Because you had me run over in the street like an animal!" he snapped. "It's your fault that you forced me to do something very draconic," she smiled. "I should have the cat bus run you over instead and have someone like my chauffeur drag your bloodied, mangled body inside before driving back to me. But that would be too unwise. His disguise is like any other ordinary bus in Kodono. The vehicle that hits you must be something very uncommon in the streets. My Peugeot Type 184. "Don't you care you ruining me life at every chance you get?" he glared. "Well, sorry if it didn't interest you, darling," she chuckled. "This is what you get for not learning your place. No matter what, never forget that you belong to me. Which means, if you ever do something stupid as leaving me again, only expect very draconic consequences coming down upon you 100-fold. And it shall be me who'll bring it to you." Inari entered the room, telling her,
"Your bath's almost ready. All that's missing now are the bubbles. That'll be taken care of right now."
"See that you do," purred the Cat Queen. Inari's mood then changes when he glared at the engineer.
"And you,"
Inari said.
"I'll be expecting an improvement in your conduct when you're in this house. You got it?"
"Why should I listen, given that you're as deluded as me boss, or any other yokai living in Kadano?" the engineer asked.
"What you must know is that it's the last night the city wishes to stay ordinary. The last day before the bicentennial,"
Inari said.
"And we expect to see Princess King in the fairground, unless Kadona wishes to get what it deserves for its incredulity, for the storm is coming. A bad one."
He turns to the Cat Queen.
"See that it does."
"Oh, don't worry, darling," purred the Cat Queen. "It's getting nearer." Then he turned and left the room. Sighing in annoyance, she said to the engineer, "It's either this place, or it's back to the Valerian, where the rent is discouraging."
"Sorry to hear that,"
the engineer said.
"I'm starting to hate this place, even more than the bloody Valerian."
"There's a lot of getting used to, especially with Mr. Takahata here. Do you think a human being mingling with monsters is worth trouble?"
"The devil it does! That ex-council person moving in this domicile, only for you to prey on him just like a spider. He ain't supposed to be here!"
"Then he shouldn't have gotten fired for what he believed in," she snarled. "He shouldn't have got stung, either."
"You and your folks, friend, shouldn't have gone out to confront that bleeding mayor again," he barked. "That was one blow too many!"
Inari entered the room again. He said to her,
"Your bath is ready, my lady, bubbles and all."
She nodded and said to the engineer, "We'll talk when we get there." As soon as they head to the principal bathroom, she strips off her bathrobe and dips her nakedness into the tub, while he placed the bathrobe onto a screen.
"In fact, I don't want it here anyway,"
he said, turning to leave.
"Don't you leave, darling," she said.
"You're staying right here with me. No questions asked. No ifs, ands, or backsides. You will hear what I'm going to tell you." He stepped away from the door. "The old kitsune's right, darling," she said. "It really is the last night before the bicentennial. Like everybody else, you consider it a celebration. To me, it's something else entirely." Reaching into the bathwater, she pulls out a gold pocket watch and thrusts it towards him. The face on the watch has the same face as the city's clock tower. Even though it's been submerged, it still ticks away. But the hands on the clock stop at 2:20. Either the city welcomes the princess, or the unknown will make it beg for her presence, after setting an example for everyone's disbelievability, she said. He crossed his arms. "Seems to me that it's now an ultimatum." Ever know the difference between a threat and an ultimatum? They have only one thing in common: consequence.
"Do you really think the mayor's going to listen to freaks like you?"
he snapped.
"He never will, darling,"
he hissed. "He and his city will get what they deserve."
"You leave!"
"I must remind you that Ryotar's pronouncement remains in effect. Unless the Princess Kitty is welcome to Kodono by tomorrow afternoon, bad things will happen to those who are good. The unknown grows very non-lenient for each hour that passes until—"
"I've heard about enough of this bug about that princess!"
he screamed.
"I don't think it would ever surprise me anymore, because you don't even know where to stop! This is why I had to leave you! You don't force everyone to welcome her! You have no right!"
She turned to him. She never raised her voice, never snarl and hiss, and never scream in his face. Instead, her voice remained calm and polite. To him, It was like shards of glass assaulting his ears. Darling, do listen to yourself. You be careful what you say to me. You wouldn't want me to sick my cats on you, would you? Well, they ain't here, are they? He asked. That's right. They're staying in the Pratchett residence, keeping the children company, while doing as I tell them. Like what? I do hope dear Mr. Pratchett would stay behind tomorrow, because when the children head to the fairground, and when he dares to go inside their room, he'll figure out that he really wasn't alone. What he said and did to those children makes me angry. Makes me really question his judgment. He's no different from the rest of the skeptics. I ain't a bit surprised. Even he has the right audacity to not believe anymore. They all listen to the mayor's words on the radio. Therefore, like it or not, they're against the girl and her existence. Unless she leaves Cadona for good. During my time at the restaurant with Ryotaro, we always realize how unpleasant Donovan really is tonight, or how disrespectful, or how shameful, or how spiteful for driving her away. You! He began. She held up one hand. There is no reasonable objection for this, darling, she said, dashing what little objections he had left. Knowing that she continues to wander around, knowing that she's alone, aside from the friends she has made, I know for a fact that something drastic must be done about it. If the unknown is involved, I shall let it. We all know that she deserves to be welcomed here for everything she has ever done. It is the unknown's intention to see that she does. If only the entire city can ever listen. One more thing. Donovan's words of hate towards the Princess Kitty on the radio? That is considered one blow too many, like bullets. Especially if only one sentence goes straight to her heart. In disgust, he shot a glare at her. However, she splashed some soapy water on his face as a result. She warned that he better wipe the glare off his face, in the threat of losing his other eye. He left the bathroom without another word. It is now pointless to argue with her any further. He would leave her again, but in doing so, his life will become worse than it already was. He knew this was the last time. He knew that his boss will never listen and never reconsider. He knew that she was too determined to see Princess Kitty be accepted by everyone. If Princess Kitty isn't, the entire city is going to find out how unmerciful the unknown can become. The Cat Queen remained in the bathtub for about 15 minutes before she pulled out the stopper and got out of the tub, drying herself, causing her fur to puff up in the process. On the way back to her room, Ryotaro approached her, saying, I'm really looking forward for tomorrow. Aren't you coming to the fairground with me and the Tanuki group and see if the princess did show up? It's best if Miss Sunhwa doesn't show up, she said. She's the one person that Donovan hates the most. He does think she's delusional. Mr. Takahata will take her place in going, while I remain in your manor with my bus and my partner, darling, until something worse happens. If it's alright with you, it is with me. You got a servant who can brush my fur? Or do you think you can do it yourself without getting tense? In fact, why not have Takahata do it? He does have a thing for me. Probably an unexpected flirtation. You go to your room and I'll bring him in from the library, Queen. He's been busy all day reading my book about the yokai. I want you here, though. He reluctantly agreed. As soon as they head inside the garden bedroom, she takes off her bathrobe and gives it to him, before she lies down onto her stomach on the bed, relishing the feel of the rich satin underneath her. "I will come back shortly with him," Ryotaro said. Now the Victrola began playing some Henry Burr. She can't help but softly sing along. In the shade of the old apple tree, where the love in your eyes I could see, where the voice that I've heard, like the song of a bird, seemed to whisper sweet music to me. Ryotaro came back holding a brush. Takahata turns out the Victrola. "Surely you have a fine taste in music too," she said. "Especially if you find yourself singing along." Takahata said nothing, except stare down at her fur. The thick, luscious tan fur all over her body, velvet to the touch. Just before the brush came in contact with it, she turned to him with another command. "And make sure you do it slowly." Shakily nodding, he slowly brushed her back. She can't help but emit low purrs, her muscles tense and relax, her tail waving slowly, even slower. "Darling, even though I rarely wander these streets, I can't help but listen to the same shtick people say about her, especially from Donovan," she said. "He announced that the city's bicentennial will be celebrated proudly, publicly, and without incident, especially from one half-cat creature that's not supposed to exist in the streets. Which means the city will celebrate without the Princess Kitty." Ryotaro growled. Of course they would say things to her. They had their feet on the ground and believed in what is real and nothing else. The mayor's hateful words at her and such phenomena is enough to make me burn with ill will. An ill will in which I refuse to hesitate. What senses do they often lack that they cannot see and cannot hear the unknown all around them? You know, I'm not such an antagonist in the story. In fact, I can't help but have sympathy towards the skeptics. At least, at first. She slowly protrudes her claws. Now, however, unless they play by our rules, I have no sympathy for them at all. Then you're not the only one. Such news might hurt her, forcing her to stay hidden like the rest of the yokai. As far as I'm concerned, Kadano has had all their chances this weekend. I meant every single word if they refuse. And the consequences will be inevitable. As soon as she felt the brush on her shoulder, she stifled a few moans. "And what will become of the 2 children I've known for 3 weeks?" she cooed. "They're so young, so alive, so unaware of how unpredictable life can be." He nodded sadly. "Exactly. They'll have to suffer like everybody else, even when they, dare I say, grow up. What they don't know will hurt them all, and they can thank only their mayor. If we don't find Kitty at the fairground tomorrow, those who attend are going to find out. The unknown will punish them all in the same way that it will punish Donovan. And she'll be unable to stop the storm when it strikes. That is the fact, Queen." "I know," she moaned, losing herself to Takahata's brushing. "Ever wonder what it feels to exist, darling? You're completely unaware of how unpredictable life can be. It can be either luck or fate. We do exist because of her, Ryotaro. We never give up on her, as long as we support her, help her, I'm pretty sure the city will welcome us too, Queen. Our true selves. I agree, for the ultimatum still stands. Our ultimatum, Queen. The people in the city must welcome the Princess Kitty to Kodono by 2 in the afternoon. And the clock is ticking. He leaves her under Takahata's mercy. What do you want me to do? Takahata asked. I want you to take my place at the fairground tomorrow, she said. And with the mayor going to be here, I'm sure he's going to need any luck, if at all. I'm pretty sure he doesn't when I finish with him. Then again, maybe I can do the degrading for you. That'll save you the trouble doing it yourself. Now would it? After all, a Bakeneko is a menace to any house they live in, or near. He could have sworn that her voice held a remnant of seduction, but beneath the words he could feel violence fighting its way to the surface. Violence as cruel as the hissing of a cat. At the same time, he can't help but wonder what she can do. In other words, he's both fascinated and scared of her, more than he had ever been in his life. Rising up, she continued, You think I can't do that? You think it'll give me a bad name all over the city? What good will that even do when everyone's so skeptic? And consider how amazing everything would be if we aren't meant to exist in this day and age. After all, 300,000 people depend on their mayor. Hopefully you have 300,000 figures to deliver, right? He snapped. She snarled. I hope you're not trying to be funny. He backs away a bit. Among everything is the devoted Princess Kitty, she said. The Princess Kitty who is destined to make this city her home, with everything depending on what she can do to those people. You think some of them has a chance to thank her? Before he can say anything, she suddenly snarled and presents her hand towards him. Claws protrude from her fingers. He took a backward step, appeared poised to flee. Observe these hands, she hissed. I could tear someone to pieces with them, and I'd do it to Donovan if I had to make him have the city welcome her. But I wouldn't do it. Far too easy. And I don't do anything that is too easy. You know so much about the Bakeneko, don't you? You just have to imagine the unending pain Donovan will feel when I'm done with that ungrateful bastard. No wonder you're the most feared of all the yokai I've known from mythology, he wailed. The most dreaded for those who like felines of any kind. So, do you find me attractive? She asked. He can feel the sharp claws lightly scratching under his neck. I find you both attractive and terrifying, Shineko, he said. You go around in your human form and act like everybody else, but then you say and did heartless, inhuman things, as if it were nothing, all without showing remorse to anyone. I find you attractive because you have the audacity to seduce me every time I come look at you. I find you terrifying because of the things you might do to people who don't deserve it. Aside from people who are antagonistic. In short, you are either adored or feared. Yeah, pretty much, she said. That's one of the things I'm good at, if not the only thing. People are so easily manipulated these days. They just had to get their heads out of the clouds. People in the Edo period are no different from the people in the modern world. Back then, they always know what you really are. On the inside. Then he said nothing more. However, she snarled at this. Are you suddenly afraid to finish what you're about to say to me? She asked. Go ahead and say it. A monster.
Yes,
He said shakily.
a monster cat.
To those people back in the day, I'm considered merciless. You were right about one thing, darling. I was both adored and feared by many, some of which who antagonized me. I am one of the most cunning, unpredictable, and deadly of all the yokai. I seldom kill my enemies without hesitation or showing sympathy. From their superstitions, people fear me and despair, just as any other Bake Neko. Honestly, humanity is such a troublesome little species, both back in the Edo period and in the modern era, as if I had no other creature to judge.
And the people who adore you and find you attractive?
He asked. She spends no time thinking about it. That is a different matter entirely, albeit explicit and not for the faint of heart. For those who adore me and find me attractive, whose high dispositions succumb to their curiosity, to their temptation, I have no trouble making lesser men prey to my dark seduction. People like you, apparently. Takahata swallowed in a throat that suddenly dry as he stepped back, dropping the brush while she rose up from the bed and took a few steps closer to him. He quickly said,
Shineko, please. I'm married. Don't expect me to.
He was cut off when she grabbed his hands and threw him across the bed. It's as if it happened in a second. He slowly got up, but her hands pinned him down, her body now on top of him. He can feel his blood turn cold when her grin turns predatory. She cooed, "Oh, darling, why resist me? It really has been a long time for me since I had a time of passion with a human being I could fully trust." He wanted to free himself, but no matter what, he was pinned, trapped like an insect in a spider's web. She went on, "Oh, alas, it is futile to resist now, for you've already reached the point of no return." Suddenly, her yellow eyes began to glow, glaring down at him. While his struggles began to grow weaker, he blushed seeing her curvy form on top of him like this, and let his eyes slowly wander over her form. He couldn't help but admire her large birthing hips, her toned stomach, and oddly enough, the large tuft of fur on her chest. Before he realized, the corruption within him starts to take root. In nearly an instant, he was succumbed, entranced by the glow of her eyes. He could no longer attempt to free himself. "Look even deeper, as long as you can understand what I say. Detach from yourself. You don't have to be ashamed or afraid of what other people think, for no one is around here to judge you. As long as you have me, adore and fear me as all my prey. To me, it's been a long time since I have an affair with a human being I can fully trust. You must plunge yourself into the flames of my heart and give yourself to enticement, the same enticement in which lesser men consider it sinful."
Oh, I submit to you, my queen.
He managed to say, the last of his willpower slipping away as he shuddered.
I give myself, my heart, my body and soul to you. I want you more than I desire to live. I submit to you, dear Shineko.
As the Cat Queen begins to dominate him in her bed with her body. Outside the manor, Ryutaro gazed up at the moon that's been sliced in half, as though done with a giant knife. At the same time, he can see the clouds begin to dominate the night sky, eventually covering the half-visible moon. The storm had finally come. Satoru Takahata wearily opened his heavy eyes and peered out at the tower bedroom. It seemed uncertain, because there's barely a lack of the morning sun piercing through the windows. All around him, his room and the furniture is entirely old-fashioned, with the smell of catmint permeated the room. He groaned under the blankets, accompanied by a brief sensation in his lower body. There, he remembered what happened last night. Last night, he was gently brushing the Cat Queen's fur. However, he found himself having a night of passion with her, under a gratifying trance. While she is terrifying, she was simply too beautiful to resist. Soon after, they were both exhausted and fell asleep. He had no idea how he ended up here, instead of back in her room. He carefully began to rise, his shifting weight causing the central wood of the white bed to creak. Then, he can hear a Victrola playing a faint melody, almost soothing, accompanied by the ticking of the wall clock. He doesn't mind if it was unexpected. Guess anything goes, really. He got out of bed and went to the hall, towards the principal bathroom, where he began the morning routine of taking a shower, brushing his teeth, and shaving his face. Then he heads back to the bedroom, so he can ring a maid for breakfast. When he opens the door, he can already tell that the Cat Queen was waiting for him. She had her black clothes and her matching hat on his bed. He turned and walked to the servant call button, pushing it. "I suggest you stay out of the mayor's way while you're in the fairground," she said. "Instead, you should turn your attention to that dirigible." "What's going to happen to that?" he said. "That's for you and the rest of Kodono to find out, if Donovan doesn't welcome the girl today," she said. "I hope you're feeling well after last night." "Oh, don't get me wrong," he sighed. "It was really fantastic. Like fireworks going off all at once." "I'm glad you liked it," she cooed. "Makes you wonder if I'm better than your wife." He turned away, shaking his head. "It really was disappointing that you won't be there in the fairground with Ryotaro." "I will see Donovan again, but not in the fairground. My cats will bring him to me wherever I am, if bad things actually happen," she said. "Where will you be going instead?" "Probably anywhere." Her body and the fur on her chest from underneath began to shrink. "Just look outside and tell me what you see." He opens the window and looks out, but he can only see the forest and the gray overcast sky above it. He turns and saw her fur slowly molt away and her tail retreating, leaving out her ears, her eyes, and her cat-like face. "What did you see out there?" she asked. "What do you think I'm looking at, Shineko?" he asked. "I don't see anything, just an overcast sky." "Exactly," came the reply. "What you'll find in the sky is the unknown, though you or your kind can't see it, or hear it, or even touch it. Even though the sky was overcast, it's everywhere, all around the city, already at the end of its tether, because of the princess still unwelcome. People never knew what will happen today, even you, darling. You're not the one who decides that, because you're only a human like everybody else, just as no one can decide whether today will be rainy or breezy. The storm had come, and now it is waiting. One more refusal from Donovan. Just one more. And the unknown shall give the incredulous inhabitants and their mayor a deterrent example the entire city will never forget. As the highest supporter of the Princess Kitty, I will stop at nothing to make her presence inevitable by any means necessary. I have concluded that to achieve that end, Even a natural catastrophe by the unknown is considered appropriate.
It is it?
Then her cat-like face became more human, with normal ears and blue eyes. The storm will be listening too, and in 6 hours, its patience will expire, she said.
It's with such great pleasure that I'm very glad to say this, Shineko, he said. I can't wait to strike.
She points her long black claw at him threateningly, but he went on regardless.
I don't know about you, but my own patience will expire too. He'll wish he never fired me. I want to beat him within an inch of his life, right in front of every single person in the city. He needs to learn that when bad things do happen, Kodono will wish it never refused Princess Kitty. I will get my chance.
She narrowed her eyes and spoke low. And have you known the consequence for insubordination if you lift one finger before the unknown? He tried to swallow in her dry throat.
I do,
he said. Then she slowly takes off her fur-lined coat. When she begins unbuttoning her waistcoat, she stopped and looked at him, asking, "What? Would you like to see me undress? Or would you go downstairs for breakfast?" He immediately turned away, saying,
6 hours, you said. 6 hours.
"And the clock is ticking," she said. "Ticking away to oblivion." Then he left the room and headed downstairs for breakfast. Even doing so, thinking of last night with her, he would never forget nor lose this sense of admiration for the Cat Queen. Chuckling richly, she strips herself to her pink undergarments before she began to put on her black clothes, one by one.